everyone. Welcome to Sales 101, the B2B sales classroom. I am your co-host, Dr. BJ Allen,
Woo!
and
Mr. Donald C. Kelly, no doctor here.
yeah, trust us. I'm a doctor. I know what I'm talking about. We are so excited to have you with us. If this is your first time listening, the goal of our podcast is to share knowledge with sales professors, mostly at the collegiate level, but even at any degree that you're using. We even have people like sales BDR managers listening to our podcast to think about how to train their new SDRs and BDRs. We're so excited for this particular episode. So it's just me and Donald today. There's a topic we've been wanting to talk about for a while that is becoming even more and more important around, especially as we think about enterprise selling, as we think about buying teams, because as every seller knows, there's just not one single buyer. And this gives us a lot of challenges as sellers, but also thinking about how do I teach this to people who are going to be, to my students who are going to be selling and are going to encounter these really difficult challenges in having buying teams, multiple people. And with that comes lots of side conversations that me as the seller am not involved in because they happen internally. So Donald, why don't you go ahead and tee off and tell us a little about what we're going to talk about today?
So there is, like as BJ shared, this is just some of the basic stats. As if you're teaching anything with sales right now, this is one that I would absolutely stress that you cover or you bring up in conversation. There are, on average, I think BJ is 8 to 11 individuals a part of a buying committee. And when I say that buying committee, it's not necessarily like, we came together and we said all of us are on a committee. There's probably people who are, on the committee, but they're extended people who are not literally on the committee, but they are influencing those committee members or have influence on that product. And those people are having conversations. Salesforce shared a stat, and I believe it's something around 80% of customers feel that their salespeople don't bring value. That's a crazy number, 80%. What that's saying is like, well, forget you, seller. I can do this on my own. I'll talk to you when I need to talk to you. You are providing something to me. You're not the source of all information. I can go to AI to get that. I can research. I can have Claude pull some information. I can look at customer reviews. It can do all of that stuff for me. So by time I am ready, I will engage you. But if that's the case, you're already late in the water. You need to be an influencer for that deal, which is another episode for another day. But when it comes to this fact that they're meeting, they did engage you, but now they're meeting internally. We call this idea, something that I discovered my firm, it's the shadow discovery call. So these are discovery calls that are happening in the shadows, closed door meetings that you're not a part of. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's only a full-time, like a meeting, BJ. It could be a side conversation that we're having on Slack or Teams about the vendors that we are looking at right now. And that information you will be never privy to. And no matter how influential you are, you can't get access to that unless you do certain things, and want to cover some of those today.
Okay, so there's a few times where the seller's going to find themselves in situations like this. So Donna, maybe let's first talk
Sure.
about when these situations are most likely. Like, what's it about the product or the buying systems or whatever, and then let's talk about some strategies. So, what are some particular industries or product types or selling situations where our students, future sellers, are likely to find themselves in these situations?
So right now, no matter what type of business, you will have something like this happening. It's been going on since the dawn of time, but now it's even more prevalent because prior, again, the buyers didn't always need us because they needed us because we were the source of knowledge. So we were brought in some of these meetings, but right now they're cutting us out because they can get that information from the web or from AI. So that's there. But usually you're going to find this happens probably prior to a discovery call or after a discovery. Now, the discovery, I want to educate on that. We do have a stage that we defined as a discovery, but the discovery is a process. And in the discovery, it's a 2-lane circuit where I am trying to learn stuff to discover if we could help you and if you're qualified. You're trying to qualify me as well and to discover if this can really solve the problem that we see uniquely, because we are so unique, where our business is different, and not all the vendors are going to be able to understand us. So those are some of the pieces that will come, but it's usually in that after you have that initial meeting, up until usually you have the proposal signed. In that you have shadow discoveries that may happen. You may have a physical meeting that will happen where they may look at all of the vendors that
Mm-hmm.
they have met with and try to ISO or isolate which one is going to be the best for their organization. And that definitely is a shadow discovery, but they're also having conversations. So if I were to pick a spot, I'd probably say right after or right before that initial meeting with you as a sales rep, that will happen. If it's an outbound approach where I'm reaching out to you, BJ, and pitching you, you guys may not have started this yet, but you're like, holy moly, yeah, we do have a problem with our CRM. We do need to get a new one. I'm going to be the champion. I don't tell you that I'm the champion, but yeah, it's something I'm interested in. And then you start rallying people. So there may be that shadow after we have initial meeting with you. Now, if it's an inbound, you best believe we had shadow meetings already,
Yeah.
determining what parameters we're looking at, and then we will gauge afterwards if you or the other 3 vendors, because some salespeople feel like if they are reached out to, like anyone I reach out to me and to my firm as an inbound, I don't trust them. What I mean by that is, it's like they're dating several people at the same time. I'm not their only one in their life, so they're looking at a couple of different vendors. So I am going as everyone is guilty until proven innocence, and don't trust fully per se until I can get them to until we can get to that point where they tell me we're solo, or yes,
Mm-hmm.
we've seen these other vendors. But some salespeople will ignore that at their peril. And they're having conversations now with amongst the 3 of you, and you didn't prepare for that. You didn't know that information, and you presented just for your solution, not
Right.
preemptive for the others. But that's where I would say those 2 scenarios, inbound and outbound. Inbound beforehand and a little bit after. Outbound, "Oh, we need this." Afterwards, they meet with you, definitely having that shadow discovery, or they're having a shadow.
Okay. So, all right. So now we've taught it to our students. We've kind of helped them conceptualize that it's not just about the discovery meeting you had with the customer. They're having internal conversations. People are asking them, "How was your call with Donald? What did
Yeah.
he say? What was the product?" So now we've taught the concept to our students. Now, what do we do about it? What are some things we can, what are some tools or some things we can teach our students to help them be able to kind of manage this process and these shadow conversations?
The first thing I would tell salespeople is, and tell leaders, and so from our standpoint, is that we need to, as professors, we need to. If I'm going to give a sales rep in that situation, the company executive and the marketing team should arm that salesperson with tools and things that can best help them to
Mm-hmm.
explain when they're not present. So if I rely on, BJ's a great seller, and then we also hire, Jefferson to be a salesperson. BJ's been seasoned with our team. BJ knows how to, create a little a pitch deck, and he's, can articulate himself well, and was able to articulate the value and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Jefferson may not necessarily know this or any of that, so he just gives the proposal or gives the recording from the meeting, and that's all that he gives. And you go back into the meeting, you and I joked about this. Imagine that there's a busy executives now. Jefferson's quote unquote champion meets with the CFO and says, "Yeah, this is what we have. It's a new AI solution." And they're like, "Whoa, it could be the fact that they're hungry or tired to have to go to a kid ball game, and we're presenting to them, and we give them just this, you know, haphazard amount of information, and it's not compelling enough." They're gonna be like, "Well, you know what? Yeah, we don't need it. What are we doing right now? Let's keep doing that and go." But they didn't give the time of the day for that. But if you have content that you have prepared as an organization that you can give to your sales professionals that can equip them to educate their prospects on the challenges or use cases or case studies and so forth, that's gonna be great. But the first piece that I would say in any of the situation, there is a champion. We have to identify who that champion is and get their
Mm-hmm.
verbal on that. Because the last thing is, like, say, BJ and I have been having a really good conversation, and BJ is interested in solving a problem. BJ is a manager in the marketing department and is a part of the committee that's selecting a new CRM. But the champion is really Mandy, the CMO, that's leading this cause, or CRO. Let's say she's a CRO, and she's really leading this cause. cause.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that Mandy is the true champion, meeting with some more of the other companies. You met with me, and I assume you are because you're passionate about the problem as well. So how do you do this without necessarily saying, "Hey, are you gonna be the champion?" I might say, "BJ, usually when we work with organizations like yourself, there's probably one person that's a part of this that leading the steering committee, that's, maybe they're somebody that's really facing the problem, they're trying to solve it. Two, they're passionate about it, or maybe
Yep.
they stimulated the conversation internally and want to find that solution. Is that you, or is there a couple of individuals that are passionate about leading this project and probably would be taking it, as steering the committee? Well, yeah, that's definitely me. Great. Or no, it's going to be Mandy. But that case now I know and I verify who that champion is, because the last
Mm-hmm.
thing I want to do is equip you with stuff, BJ, and you're not the person selling internally. Am I making sense on this?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really, really important. And we often teach, most of the sales processes and methodologies have some type of find the decision maker, right? Find the
Okay.
decision maker. And we usually teach this pretty simplistically in our classes, like just ask them, who's the decision maker and who else should be on this call next time, and all of these discussions. But I love what you're saying is let's make sure that we know not just like who's going to sign off on it, right? But who's also excited and who's passionate about this, because that we can equip them with the tools to teach internally. So
Mm,
now let's talk about that, because I
sure.
think, at least in my opinion, Donald, this is probably the most important part, which
Yes.
is equipped your champion with the knowledge and the tools they need to sell internally. Because a lot of times as sellers, we're like, all right, I'm selling to Donald. He loved my demo. Like
Yay.
he's totally on board. Like this is awesome. Donald's going to go to his boss and his boss is going to say, "Yep, Donald, this is great. Well, why do we need this?" And Donald's going to say, "Well, because here's the things." And Donald can't remember our conversation, right? And he's not a salesperson. He's maybe a tech manager, an information systems guy, and
Don't even like to talk
and
to people.
yeah, God bless our engineers, but they're not always the best at communicating. And so all of a sudden the boss is like, this doesn't sound important, and then kills, in 2 seconds kills the deal. So I love this concept. Let's talk about it, Donald. Tell me, how do I teach my students
Yeah.
about equipping, equipping, equipping the
You're the
decision
doctor.
maker, or the champion? How do I give the tools to my champion to sell internally?
The second component that I'll say right before we jump into that part, BJ, is to know who is a part of that committee or who's going to be influencing. So there's two tiers. You have your direct committee members, and then you have the influencers. So I do want to figure out from Donald now at this
Okay.
point, like Donald, who is use, and you can set it up like this. Some people, and he may not necessarily know yet, right? Because it could have been Donald was given the task by Mandy, the CMO, to go and find these companies because we do have this problem, and Donald is passionate about it, and he's going to be the face. But Mandy is steering all of these other people, all of the CFO, the
Hmm.
CEO, the all the marketing team. She is really doing that, and she just has me as the gopher, but you think that I am the champion. But now I say, no, I am helping to gather information for this. I'm passionate about it, but my boss, Mandy, is the CMO. Great. Usually in a company, we find that there's, someone that may be leading it. Who else is a part of that organization that would have influence? In our view, it's usually a sales director, the CRO, as well as the,
Right.
so and so. Like, yes, that's correct. And you got to have the CFO, and your company your size, there's probably legal. Is that correct? I am not quite sure all of that information, but I can verify that. Perfect. Because now I know who are the cast of characters. Because as I know the cast of characters, this
Hmm.
helps me to be able to interact. And I always want to get permission if I am behind the eight ball, meaning this already started. So I want to tell my champion, or my contact, if they're not the champion, I don't want to go over their heads, but I might say, fantastic. I would typically I love to connect with those individual. I'm going to work through you. Would you be willing to introduce me to them, or should I just connect with them on LinkedIn and introduce myself? What do you feel would be the best approach? And I will front load it to say, well, you introduce me to them, because they're gonna, as opposed to saying don't connect with them at all, because I need to multi-thread. So then the other option is like, I can reach out to them, or should I do it on my own and reach out to them? They might say, yeah,
Right.
I'll introduce you to them. Or either way, it's going to be I don't want to do that extra work. So yes, you reach out to them as well. But now I do have that permission from my contact, and I can then leverage that to say something like, hey, Angie, I spoke with BJ. He's excited for, looking at this solution. Permission to connect here on LinkedIn. But that makes that some kind of engagement or interaction
Yeah.
with that, with those contacts. But now I'm multi-threading throughout this organization without stepping on toes or overstepping my contact, that's my guide, so to speak, who may not be my true champ. But then
Got
now
it.
I know who the cast of characters are. I can create assets accordingly, because there may be an executive summary that I can create for the CFO that shows like the ROI, like really, this is the true problem. And this is the reason, the impact to the organization, if we don't solve it. And then here's what it would cost in, the opportunity cost. And then here's the return. The legal side, I might present it in a different way. Here's the legal ramification. Here's the impact the organization could put, shareholders in challenge. And then here's the, why we need to fix it, and some examples of how we fixed it for other organizations. And then, whatever. But that's for legal. For the CEO, and for maybe the, the other executive team, I might look at what are some of the earnings call that they've had recently. If it's a publicly traded company, what the CFO said and what the CEO said. I had a guy that I interviewed recently for my podcast. It's called Acumen Learning, and he's out of Utah too, by the way. But one of the things that he has a book called Business Acumen for Sales Success, and one of the things they
Mhm.
teach is just this idea that if the earnings call is the CEO and CFO's comments are them telling salespeople how to sell to them. Because if you can understand what those initiatives are, then you could tie that back. So we might say we're looking for opportunities to prevent, to fine tune our operations, or to
Got it.
expand CRO. Our CRM tool can best help that. So now I'm tackling that information. So now I create this kit for these cast of characters that I can give to the CFO. I mean, give to my contact or the champion that they can utilize. But one-page financial summary. You go over the challenges, some of the solutions.
Love
It's
it.
pretty much going to be for everybody, but you're going to adjust it based on the role. That, if we can, professors teach that, I think that's going to definitely be money in the bank for us.
Love it. So we don't just say, all right, yeah, go to Anna, go ahead and talk to whoever. Like, we equip them with, okay, here's some of the things you could say. Your CFO mentioned this in our earnings call. Here's kind of how I would frame this to them. And yeah, and you can even, I mean, I even had salespeople tell me like they just role play with their champion.
Of
They're
course,
like, hey,
yeah.
I'll pretend to be you, and you ask me some of the things that you think your boss might ask you, and
Grill me.
I'll give you some pointers of maybe some things you could say. But these conversations, right, to just summarize our conversation today, Donald,
Sure.
these shadow discoveries are happening. We all know that they are, and they influence purchasing decisions. These are problematic for a salesperson because you're not there. So, how can you find out what are the things that they're talking about? How can you find out who those players are? And then how can you find out who the champion, the true champion is? And how can you equip them with some of these tools that's going to allow them to sell internally? Because all it takes is one CEO who's
Yep.
just hungry or had a bad, day to be like, yeah, I don't think we need that, right? Like, and
After
being able
months of
to,
preparation, and that gets
yes,
killed in like 10 seconds.
and every seller's had that email. Hey, I talked to my boss and they said they don't think this is a good fit, so reach out in 6 months, right? You're like, what? Like I thought we were doing so well. So thank you, Donald. What a great
One last piece I
conversation
want
to
to share
have.
with that
Well, yeah,
to
go
BJ
ahead.
is your company, if the company should have case studies that they can utilize. And if they don't have case studies, we need to look at getting, you can look at some case studies that you can
Yeah.
find, testimonials, frequently asked questions, because that's going to be definitely effective for your legal side, and for maybe your technical folks, depending on who you're bringing into the meeting. And then you can also record videos answering some of this stuff and then providing that to your champion as she or he brings that inside the organization. So that's my little tidbit there. But they're happening. Shadow discoveries are happening. It's a constant piece of the conversation, and we need to make sure we're ready for it.
Absolutely. All right. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you now have some kind of a framework to be able to teach this to your students, give them some tools, help them understand these things are happening. As always, we hope that this podcast helps you help your students to be able to go out and sell and enjoy their career in professional selling. If this is your first time listening, share this episode with someone that you think may enjoy it, and come back. We have lots of great other content. So thank you for joining us. Until next time, Donald.
Go sell something. See you guys.
We'll see ya.